Hello and welcome to the ScatterVolt channel, and today we're going to be building a $2,000 gaming PC build, which is going to be ridiculously overkill for like 95% of you who are watching this video. This PC isn't just meant for 1080p and 1440p gaming. No, this can do flat out 4K gaming if you really wanted to, thanks to the processor and graphics card we're harnessing to make this PC possible. So in today's build guide, I'll show you how to put together this computer step by step, the parts going inside of it, how to install Windows, graphics card drivers, and then its 4K gaming performance. So if you'd like to build this computer for yourself, or if you just want to check out the parts that I use, then I'll have all of that linked in the description below, but I'm not going to waste any more of your time. Let me show you how to start with this computer. So for the motherboard, we are going with the Gigabyte B650 Gaming X AX, and the AX stands for Wi-Fi. So you don't need to get a Wi-Fi card for this motherboard. There's already gonna be Wi-Fi built in. And you know what, let me go ahead and also spoil the processor choice for this build. I'm going with the Ryzen 7 7800X 3D, and there's a really good reason why I'm choosing this. For one, this is an 8-core, 16-threaded CPU with AMD's 3D V-Cache technology. So in terms of pure frame rate and gaming performance, it is the best. When it comes to that 8-core layout found on the 7800X 3D, it is just better for gaming because it's better optimized, say versus the 12-core and even 16-core variants, by a bit. And because it's 8 cores and 16 threads, we don't need as overkill of a motherboard to keep it cool and harnessed, which is why we're going with this mid-tier B650 motherboard. So this is a really excellent processor and motherboard combination we're gonna be fitting in this $2,000 gaming PC build. And inside the motherboard box, we can find our Wi-Fi antenna, we can find this little manual, which includes a QR code to the full manual for our motherboard, which we will probably need, and then some other screws and accessories that we won't need. So first thing I want you to do is to unscrew these 4 screws here found around the CPU socket and remove these black plastic brackets. Then to install our 7800X 3D, go ahead and locate the triangle found on the top left of the processor and be sure to line that up with the triangle found on the top left of the motherboard socket, indicating how this should be oriented. So go ahead and open this latch up, bring this open. Once again, triangle on the top left of the socket, line it up with the CPU, drop this in, give it a little jiggle, make sure it's in there, and once it is, place down this bracket and clamp this down, and that plastic piece should pop right off. Okay, now time to install the memory, which I have gone with 32 gigabytes of DDR5 memory from Team Group, this being their T-Force Delta RGB kit running at 6,000 megahertz. And this is probably as fast as you want to go for a Ryzen 7000 system. Now, fortunately, DDR5 RAM prices have been going down, so you can find this kit for about, I think, just under $100, which is actually not too shabby. I will be installing that soon, but here is the storage we're also going with. I'm choosing a 1 terabyte M.2 PCIe Gen 4.0 SSD from Team Group, and this is their T-Force Cardera A440. Right here, and it comes with its own heatsink, but we're not gonna mess with that because the motherboard comes with its own bigger heatsink. So this isn't like a top tier M.2 PCIe Gen 4.0 SSD, but it is still pretty fast, which means it's not super expensive. It is a little bit of a cost, but you really don't need any more than this if you're a gamer. Now, if you're a content creator or professional, then sure, but for most gamers, something like this is all you need. Now let's go ahead and install our memory. So open up slots A2 and B2 on the motherboard, which you can find right here on this little marking on the motherboard. Then you're going to insert this RAM and it'll only go in one way. Once it's in there, give it a firm press. Make sure you hear that click all the way, and then let's do the other one. Then to install our M.2 SSD, you'll need a Phillips head 1 screwdriver, which should be a little bit smaller than a regular Phillips head screwdriver. Unscrew this screw here, take this out, and as you'll see, there's this little plastic covering here that you gotta take off so the M.2 SSD can make contact with the heatsink. Then take your Cardera A440, line it up with this little notch here on the connector on the M.2 SSD with this little insert here. It'll only go in one way, you'll figure it out. Give it a firm click, make sure it's in there, and then now let's go ahead and put back on the heatsink, line it up with the hole, screw this back in, and voila. So at this point, your motherboard, CPU, RAM, and storage should look like this on the motherboard. So one thing, as you'll notice, there isn't a stock cooler that comes with the 7800X 3D because it's not gonna be good enough. So therefore, we are going with an aftermarket CPU cooler. It doesn't matter which one you get, but for this build, I'm choosing this air cooler from Montech, which is rated at a 270 watt TDP, which is more than plenty for the 7800X 3D, which I believe has a TDP of 165 watts. Which once again is one of the cool reasons why the 7800X 3D is such a good gaming processor. So with that said, I do have to install an aftermarket CPU cooler on here that is required, but this one from Montech is going to work well with the aesthetics of this build because we have a Montech PC case. So I'll go ahead and install this. I'm not gonna show you exactly how to do it step by step because that's what the manual here is for, and you may not even end up using this cooler, but I'll show you guys a quick little montage just so you see what's up. All right, so before we put in the motherboard into the PC case, we gotta go ahead and prep it. So let's go ahead and open up the side panel here. Let's see if there's anything important. Ooh, okay, let's grab our scissors. So here in the, you know what? Let's talk about the case. This is the Montech Sky 2, and this is a really excellent case that strives a perfect balance between aesthetics and performance and cost, because at the time of filming this video, I believe this case retails for around $90, and it comes with 1, 2, 3 fans and a fourth, I think. But now that you've seen the inside of the PC case, let's go ahead and check the back. All right, if we move this around, oh, this is clean. I like this Montech. Here we have a little accessories box, which contains all the screws we need to install everything into this PC case. Right here, including some zip ties. If you don't know where to place what in this PC case, even though it's pretty straightforward, we do have a manual here showing you what's what. And finally, you are given a dedicated RGB and fan controller, which is so awesome to see. So we're gonna install a lot more fans into this PC case to max it out, and I'm happy to see that one of these is included, which we'll be able to control through our motherboard in like software. Now, as you can see with our chunky motherboard, we already have an IO shield pre-installed, so we don't need to stick one of those into here. And since this is an ATX case, we should have all of the standoffs we need pre-installed. Yep, we're good. So now let's go ahead and install the motherboard. Okay, let's go ahead and drop in the motherboard, line it up with this little cut here for the IO shield. That'll help us direct orientation of this. Might need to remove this cable for a second, get it out of the way. Okay, and once that is in there, you're gonna wanna use these screws you see here on screen, the ones that are designated for the motherboard because they have MB on them. Now let's go ahead and screw in each of these standoffs one by one, but once you get the screw in there, don't tighten it up all the way. We'll go ahead and put in these screws just about halfway, and then we'll tighten each of them individually once all of them are in. All right, I've got all the screws pre-installed. Now let's go ahead and tighten each of these all the way, one by one. On that end, go to the other corner, go to the other corner, go to the other corner, and just keep this up. There we go. Okay, now let's go ahead and install the power supply, which I've chosen this 1200 watt FSP power supply, 80 plus platinum, all that fun stuff. But it is actually, okay, it's an appropriate power supply for a $2,000 build, but it is kind of out of budget. And that's because I needed a power supply and this was the only one lying around. By the way, we got our screws for the power supply here in this baggie. So with that said, the actual intended power supply for this build really doesn't need any more than like 850 watts. There's your power cable, and here are all of our cables. So let's go ahead and plug in all of the necessary power cables we need to power on this system. So let's go ahead and start with our big chunky motherboard power connector, this guy. We will obviously need this. If we can look at our motherboard, we'll need an 8-pin and a 4-pin connector for the CPU. So let's go ahead and plug in one of these for our CPU power cable. And you know what, I might just do another one just so we can keep the cables a little more clean. Then if you remember, there's that dedicated RGB and fan controller on the back of the PC case. And in order to power that on, we need a SATA power connector. So now let's go ahead and plug in one of these into where it says peripheral. And then lastly, we need those PCIe power cables for our graphics card. So now let's go ahead and plug those into where it says PCIe on the power supply. Okay, and I think that is everything. And we want to plug all of this in now because we don't want to install the power supply and not have any of these cables pre-plugged in. So something really cool with the Montech Sky 2 is that we have plenty of space to route our cables, which is epic because we've got a lot of this to deal with. So fan side facing down, let's go ahead and place this big chunky boy into here. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and take out the hard drive bay here. That is out. Can we remove this? There we go. So with that room now in the bottom of the case, let's put this back in and, oh yeah, that's much better. Let's grab our little plastic bag of case screws for the power supply. Go ahead and line up 4 of the holes with the power supply with the PC case, and let's start screwing these in one by one. All right, and with that in, if we scooch this around, our next task is to go ahead and plug in everything into this PC case. So first, let's start with the fan and RGB hub. So let's go ahead and power it on by connecting a SATA power cable to the SATA power connector found from the hub. There we go. So here is our fan header cable from the RGB and fan controller. We're gonna plug this into one of the system fan headers on the motherboard so we can control all the fans from that single controller. Then here is the ARGB header for the fan and RGB fan header found in the PC case. Once again, we'll plug this into the motherboard, and this is a 3-pin connector. So we'll plug in the 3-pin ARGB header into here, and there we go. So now let's go ahead and plug in the rest of our front I/O cables from the PC case. Starting with our front panel connector, this controls our power button, reset button, and all that. And fortunately, it is all in a single connector. And this is gonna go here on the bottom left of the motherboard. If you wanna find the location for that, then refer to the motherboard manual or what you see here on screen. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Then over here on the left side of the motherboard is our HD audio connector. I know you can't see it that well, but it's this cable with different colors on it. And this is going to plug in all the way over here, and it's gonna go in one way. Now let's go ahead and plug in our USB-C connector, and it's gonna go right here. There you go. And then lastly, here's our USB 3.0 connector. There's a little notch here on the connector that's gonna line up with this, so only go in one way. Now let's go ahead and plug in the power cables for this PC build, starting with the CPU power connector, which we've got this 2-pin version right here. There's a little notch here on the connector, or a little latch, and it'll connect with this. It'll only go in one way. So now let's go ahead and install the motherboard power cable. This big thing, it's gonna go into here. It's only gonna go in a certain way. As you can see, there's a little latch here on the connector that's gonna line up with this notch here on the motherboard power connector. Line the two up. Ooh, make sure that is all the way in there. And finally, just keep your VGA cables here on the side inside your PC case, because now we're going to install the graphics card. Okay, for the graphics card, we are going with the Radeon 7900 XTX. This is, in some cases, the fastest graphics card you can get. And best of all, it isn't outrageously expensive. For a graphics card with this amount of speed, it's gonna cost you actually right now below $1,000. I think more around $980 or $970 as of making this video. Now the 7900 XTX is a really special graphics card because all the way from the ground up, it uses the RDNA 3 architecture, and more specifically for the 7900 XTX, chiplet design. And that really is the main calling card of why a graphics card of this speed costs below $1,000. The primary GPU die on here is 5 nanometers, but everything else like the memory controller is 6 nanometers, allowing this to cut a bit on price and costs. So that chiplet design is really awesome because it's still gonna deliver you excellent gaming performance, but not having the price spiral out of control with this 7900 XTX. And once again, with the RDNA 3 architecture, you are given access to the latest ray tracing technologies from AMD with built-in AI accelerators as well for ray tracing. Oh yeah, and at this price range of just under $1,000, it comes with 24 gigabytes of VRAM. You will not find another graphics card with this amount of VRAM at its price. Okay, so to install the graphics card, first we need to open up the PCI slots that'll be populated by it. So let's look at the topmost PCI slot. That's going to let us remove these 3 slots because this is, or no, sorry, 2 slots. This is a 2-slot card. Now let's go ahead and plug this in. Be sure to take off the PCI Express slot cover so you can actually insert this into the motherboard, once again into the topmost slot. That is going to give us full performance. Oh wow, this thing is going to fit indeed. Ah, never mind. Gotta unscrew this one as well. Once you're ready to make contact, make sure to press this in all the way, like this. You should hear a little click, but once this is in there, then you are good. And let's go ahead and screw this back into the case. Okay, so as you guys see, there is a sag bracket that is included, and I just now figured out how to install it. So we're gonna have to remove these screws that we just screwed in from the 7900X TX, and we're going to need to unscrew 2 more brackets right below this. Okay, and now with that, we'll go ahead and place this up onto the graphics card. There we go. Now that anti-sag bracket is in place, and the last thing we are going to do is plug in all of our power connectors. So let's start from the left. Get that in, and we'll get this adjacent connector. Make sure that is in all the way, and get this final connector and plug that in. Okay, so with everything plugged in, now let's go ahead and turn on the system for the first time. So be sure to plug in your keyboard, mouse, display cable from your graphics card to your monitor, the power cable to the monitor, the power cable to the computer. And once you have all of that, then it's time to bust out your Windows bootable media device. And if you don't know how to create one of these, then I have a link to a tutorial in the description below if you'd like to go ahead and create one of these yourself for preferably Windows 11. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this into the back of the computer, and I'm gonna go ahead and flick the switch on the back of the power supply from the circle to the line. And now we should be able to press the power button. It's on, and we'll wait for the system to boot up. Okay, so after a little bit, you should see something like this. If it happens to be the case, just go ahead and follow the instructions on screen. Let's go ahead and reset the FTPM and install Windows. All right, let's go ahead and install Windows 11. All right, let's go ahead and install Windows. So hit next, hit install now. Here you can enter your Windows product key if you have one, but if you don't, you can just say I don't have one, and you can address that later. We're going to install Windows 11 Home, hit next. Here we'll go ahead and accept license and conditions, custom. There is our 1 terabyte M.2 SSD, hit next, and we'll let this run. So go ahead and choose your country, choose your keyboard. If you don't need a second keyboard layout, then just skip that. Here, go ahead and select your Wi-Fi network that you're gonna go ahead and use to install Windows. Here we go, hit next. Here you're welcome to name your computer, but I won't for now. Now let's go ahead and sign into your Microsoft account, and that could be like an @Gmail or a Hotmail account, or if you're an Xbox user, whatever your Xbox email was if you want. Or if you don't have one, then it's time to create one. Now, if you're given this option, just go ahead and hit View More Options, but you should see something that says Set up as a new device. Hit Next. Let's go ahead and create a PIN. I like to do ASDF. Pretty easy. Now for all these individual privacy settings, I just switch them off because they're extra processes that can run in the background that I just don't need. Now I skip this, don't need that, don't need this, skip, don't need this, decline, decline, skip for now. And with that, we are finished installing Windows. So once you boot into Windows, if you're given this option to install the Gigabyte Control Center, then I go ahead and do that because that's a really easy way of managing all the utilities and drivers for your chipset and your motherboard, including how to install your RGB drivers. So go ahead and hit next, agree to these things, just go ahead and let it run. Now let's go ahead and open up Gigabyte Control Center, which we just downloaded. Go ahead and accept. Here on this little arrow icon, the Update Center, go ahead and click on that. Let's go ahead and check for the latest software, and here we have everything we need. But let's go ahead and uncheck Norton because that's unnecessary, but everything else we probably need. As you can see, we don't have the current versions installed, so let's go ahead and hit install and let these run. And you can even see right here, there's a little status bar letting you know which of these is being installed. But meanwhile, while that is running, let's go ahead and install the graphics card drivers. So that's pretty easy. All you gotta do is type in Radeon drivers into your search engine, click on the AMD drivers and support link at the very top. Let's go ahead and select our RX 7900 XTX, hit submit. We're using Windows 11. Let's go ahead and download the latest version. And let's check back on our Gigabyte Control Center, and while that's running, let's go ahead and hit yes, check. Make sure the rest of these are installed, like that. But here's our AMD Adrenalin software currently being installed. We just gotta let this run, it's pretty straightforward. Let's go ahead and hit install, and let this run. All right, once that is finished up, we will not restart our system just yet because remember, we still have all of our other utilities from the Gigabyte Control Center that are downloading still in the background. So once you let everything install in the Gigabyte Control Center, then we can finally restart our computer and check one more thing in the BIOS. So as you hit the restart button, be sure to click the delete key when your computer restarts to enter the BIOS. There we go. Let's go ahead and change a few things. So let's go ahead and enable XMP, aka Expo. There we go. And then the last thing I want you to check, if we go into advanced mode and we go to advanced CPU settings and we go to settings, we go to IO ports, and above 4G decoding and resizable bar is enabled, and that is good. That is all we need to check. Let's go ahead and hit save and exit, and we are ready now to get to gaming. Okay, so small problem. My 4K monitor doesn't work, and we have a 7900 XTX and a 7800 X3D in this PC, and I need to demonstrate that it's really flipping fast. So what I'm going to attempt to do is to boot up every single graphically intensive game on this computer and push every single graphical setting to the max at 1440p. Okay, here we have Cyberpunk. Let's go ahead. Let's start things off. Once again, we're restricted to 1440p. This is a 4K gaming computer. Can we do overdrive? You know what? I really want to know. All right, we have overdrive turned on. We have Fidelity FX set to its own thing. Oh, and we got to go ahead and turn off VSync, which it is. Oh shoot, never mind, we're actually slowing down the computer. Maybe not ray tracing overdrive. How about this? Ray tracing ultra. Okay. It's like to 60 frames per second. Is there something we can do about that? Huh, it looks like the computer is fine with this being at 60 frames per second. This is ray tracing ultra. I know it's a step below ray tracing overdrive, but still. This is a 4K gaming computer, and once again, if you attempt 1440p on this, you are wasting your money. Get yourself a 4K monitor. This is not even budging it. So we're gonna try this one more time, but with Halo Infinite, and the reason why is because this is the one first-person shooter game I know that is somewhat graphically intense and doesn't offer any upscalers like FSR, DLSS, or XeSS. So it's just completely raw. I have everything turned on. I hope this taxes this computer at least somewhat. All right, here we go. What can we get? 60? No. Oh, there it is. 234 frames per second at 1440p. Oh, okay, not even a contest. Goodness gracious. Like, you've got to be gaming at 4K at least, or ultra wide, you know, to make use of this, because at 1440p, it's a joke at how fast this is. In terms of GPU memory usage, though, we are at 8. Let's go ahead and turn the tables a little bit. Let's try a different game. Okay, so here's a game you probably want a lot of frames per second in, and that is F1 2022. Now, I've got the graphics set to ultra settings, and that includes ray tracing, and I've got the upscaler at FSR 2 on the quality preset at 1440p. And despite ray tracing, this game is still getting a ton of frames per second. I mean, it's just hard to recommend somebody a computer of this stature just because it's too fast for their most everyday gaming needs, especially at 1440p. So you're really only going to find worth in this computer at 4K resolution, but not everyone has a 4K gaming monitor. So it's just absurd. And once again, this is with ray tracing on in F1 2022. If we turn it off, I'm actually really curious. What happens if we turn off ray tracing? Okay, and the big reveal. 300, 320, 318, 325, 320. Oh, that's absurd. That is, you're covered, you're done, you're set. Once you have a gaming PC of this scale, you're done. And speaking of that, let's go ahead and wrap up the video. Okay, so I really don't have that many opinions on this computer simply because it's just so darn fast, and quite frankly, you could almost, I'll admit this, you probably could have skipped the benchmark section of this video even if I had a 4K monitor on me that worked, because this computer still at the end of the day would have absolutely slaughtered it. 1440p, 4K, the 7800X TX, and the 7800X 3D in this gaming PC, it's the fastest gaming combo in many scenarios, so what could I say? There's nothing negative about it. Okay, sure, the power draw may be a lot higher than usual, especially with the 7800X TX, but note that the CPU is a 7800X 3D, and that does consume less wattage than the 7900X 3D and 7950X 3D. And either way, if you're getting a high-end computer, it is going to consume more wattage than usual. That quite literally has to be the only con. Everything else about this build is pretty sublime. I mean, all the fans here are controllable, so I can have them set to the lowest fan speed if I want to keep things silent, since I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fans in here, including the CPU cooler tower, which is doing a really excellent job actually cooling off that 7800X 3D. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up the video here, and I wanna give a thank you to AMD for sending out the graphics card and processor for this sponsored PC build guide. And once again, all the parts you need to build this computer, including the 7900X TX and 7800X 3D, can be found in the description below. So once again, thank you so much for watching, and this is the ScatterVolt channel, signing out.